The Zuni Pueblo dancers are known for their brightly colored clothing and beautiful dancing. One of their dances is called the deer dance. In the following story, a woman in Santa Clara, New Mexico went to watch her Zuni friend perform the deer dance with a troupe. She noted that the dancers wore bells on their ankles, and that they used sticks with bells to stomp the ground. She also noted that these bells had a distinctive ring to them. After the show, the woman and her friend drove back together to his place and stayed in his car a while, shooting the breeze. What follows is her account of what happened next. My buddy lives in Santa Clara Pueblo, pretty close to the river, and is actually like the last line of houses before you go to the forest. Anyways, I got out of the car and started hearing bells, and I'd thought I heard that sound before, so I looked around but couldn't really see anything. Then I realized, it was the same sound and rhythm that the dancers' bells made. I knew no one should be dancing this late, 10 p.m., so I thought it was so weird. Across the street, where the light from the porch light couldn't reach, there was a stop sign, and beside the stop sign was where the bells were ringing in rhythm. First I see a shadow of a person dancing. It was wearing deer dancer attire, except it looked like something the ancestors used to wear. Today they wear leathers and skins, but this one was wearing a loincloth. But something was odd about it, so I stood watching it, and it was like it was hypnotizing me with its dancing. Then I realized it was taller than the stop sign, that's like 10 to 12 feet at least. So I look again and I realize it's a giant shadow being that is like 12 feet tall, dancing like it wanted me to see it, which they are said to do here. Only women are supposed to be able to see the deer dancers before dusk, and feed them. It had huge elk horns, like 6 feet across. The torso was like a barrel, probably 5 feet in diameter. I'd say the arms were 2 feet in diameter and the thighs were like the same, equal proportions. The shadow being was muscular, just ripped like a bodybuilder. At that time my friend comes out of the car and asks, "What is that noise?" Me being stuck, I just couldn't say anything but stare. And then he sees it and starts spitting at it. He tells me to get inside quickly, but he goes towards it and tells it something in Tanoan language spoken by Pueblo people. Then he comes inside. I was like, what was that? And he just says it's a chug. I still don't know what means, but that was one of the biggest shadow people I've ever seen. Note, the woman found out later that chug means an evil witch. This happened around the summer of 2009 to 2010 in Santa Clara Pueblo, 1 mile west of Espanola, New Mexico, 15 miles east of Los Alamos. Okay, 2 of my dad's experiences. Background: Dad was an LDS missionary on the Navajo reservation in the Four Corners area. At least twice he had close encounters with persons/beings he believed to have been skinwalkers. The first event occurred with both my dad and his missionary friend present. They were studying scriptures in a rented trailer. They'd rented it from a Navajo man who later wound up in jail for drugs, I think. I'll refer to this Navajo man as Bob, for simplicity's sake. So Dad and his friend are in their rented trailer studying the scriptures, sitting just a couple of yards from each other, when Dad suddenly notices a strange older Navajo man standing right in front of him. Dad hadn't seen him enter and had no idea how the man had got there. So the old man asks, in Navajo, "Where is my son Bob?" Dad, completely surprised, simply replied, "He's not here." He was too afraid to upset the old man, so Dad conveniently left out that Bob was in jail. Anyway, Dad looked over at his friend, who was also staring in shock at the old Navajo. When Dad looked back, the old man was gone. He was there one moment and gone the next, in the blink of an eye. Dad and his friend jumped to their feet and searched the trailer. The door was locked, and the windows shut. There was simply no way to get in and out without being noticed. They both asked around afterwards, and the locals claim that Bob's dad had been involved in black magic, but they wouldn't say anything more about it. This next story occurred a few months later. Dad and his friend were headed home in their Jeep at night between 9 and 10 p.m. This is southeast Utah/northeast Arizona, and they were driving through a little valley on their way home. The valley was actually known for having some ceremonial significance to the Navajo. So Dad's driving, and his friend is napping in the passenger seat. As they get to the middle of the valley, the Jeep suddenly dies and rolls to a stop. No lights, no electricity, no power at all. Just completely dead. Dad steps out and opens the hood. As he's working on getting the Jeep to start, he notices several dark shapes approaching and encircling the car at a small distance. They're swaying and moaning something that Dad can't understand. Scared, Dad reaches over and shakes his friend to wake him. No matter how hard Dad shakes him, his friend won't wake up. The encircling dark shapes are now getting closer. Completely terrified now, Dad does the only thing he can, pray, and pray hard. Suddenly the electricity and lights of the Jeep come back on. The moment the headlights came back on, the dark shapes were gone without a trace. Dad then jumps inside, starts the engine, and floors it out of the valley. Only then does his friend wake up. He wants to know why they're speeding, and Dad explains the whole thing to him. My dad has always been an honest religious man, so I believe him to be telling the truth. I work with a Navajo co-worker, and one time I told her about my dad's experiences. She said that they're totally consistent with what she knows about Skinwalkers. I asked her if she could tell me any more about them, and she outright refused. In fact, I got the impression that if I pushed the topic I'd be on thin ice with her. All she'd tell me was, there are very real evil things in the world,